Turbo Man action figure with the arms and legs that move, and the boomerang suitor, and the rock and roar jetpack, and the realistic voice actor.
A heading has been reached. Press, highlight, and parenthetical. That line might make you smile. It's innocent, playful, a child's imagination at its purest. But the boy who spoke those words would soon be thrown into a world that was anything but safe. After Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, Jake Lloyd received more than 1,000 hate-filled letters. Adults blamed a child for ruining their own childhood memories. A harsh criticism for anyone, but for a 10-year-old boy, it was crushing. Even worse, the bullying was only the beginning. In 2018, tragedy struck his family in the most unimaginable way. The world saw Jake vanish for years. When he reappeared in 2023, he was almost unrecognizable. The boy who once brought Anakin Skywalker to life had faced battles no one knew about, and lost some of them quietly. Jake Matthew Lloyd entered the world on March 5, 1989, at Poudre Valley Hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. Nestled in the Rockies, the city was calm, full of mountains, and blessed with wide-open skies. His parents, Lisa and Bill, wanted to build a warm home amidst the grandeur of nature. Lisa worked as an entertainment agent, Bill as an EMT, and they raised Jake and his younger sister Madison in a household that valued creativity and hard work. From a young age, Jake loved performing. By age 4, he was already putting on skits at school and making relatives laugh at family dinners. Fort Collins' small theater programs and youth workshops gave him room to explore. Lisa noticed early on how he could light up any room. He never froze under attention, a rare trait in a young child. Even with limited funds, Lisa pushed him forward. Local commercials and small TV roles felt like stepping stones towards something bigger. Jake's talent kept surfacing. At 4, he could act out complex scenes as though he'd been rehearsing for weeks. Lisa began taking him to children's theater workshops and open auditions. Adults often paused, surprised at how fearless and quick-thinking he was. By 6, he landed a Smucker's commercial in 1995, and his career began accelerating. He appeared in school plays, community shows, and small regional productions. Teachers called him naturally funny. Directors called him bold. Each stage built confidence. Each camera made him more comfortable with lights, sound, and pressure. Family shifts and early challenges. At 7, Jake's life changed dramatically. His parents divorced, and the family moved to Indianapolis, Indiana. The hope was stability, but the new city brought fresh struggles. Bills piled up. Child support was inconsistent. Even a grocery trip became stressful. Lisa moved fast. Using her entertainment contacts, she threw Jake into auditions before they even unpacked. Those early gigs helped pay bills and keep the family afloat, but they also trapped Jake deeper into the intense grind of early fame. Lisa later admitted that pushing him so young was both a blessing and a burden. She wanted to protect him, but in doing so, she also thrust him into a world she barely had time to understand. Years later, as he entered Carmel High School, Jake carried all of it with him. The fame, the stress, the whispered classmates, the tension at home. His mother tried to stay close to his career decisions, sometimes arguing with him when auditions conflicted with schoolwork. Teachers noticed his effort, but they also saw the exhaustion of trying to balance a childhood that was anything but normal. Each new opportunity made him more sensitive. Every criticism cut deeper. His parents' divorce, the pressures of fame, and the exposure to adult problems created a childhood that was heavy and unpredictable. Jake's first real acting break came in 1996 on ER. Playing Jimmy Sweet, a boy with a rare illness, Jake worked across 4 episodes, performing long, emotional scenes alongside George Clooney. He cried on cue, asked heartbreaking questions, and held the set in silence with his trembling voice. The crew noticed something extraordinary. That role opened doors, and Jake soon auditioned for more than 20 other parts before landing a role in the 1996 film Unhook the Stars. Filming demanded more than any child should handle. Jake had to cry, express fear, anger, and confusion, sometimes beside veteran actors like Marissa Tomei and Gerard Depardieu. The film premiered at Grauman's Chinese Theater on October 22, 1996. Jake walked the red carpet before he'd even mastered long division. Around the same time, he filmed The Pretender, with kidnapping and chase scenes. A prop door malfunctioned and nearly hit him, prompting stricter safety protocols. Hours grew longer, shoots became tougher, and the weight of adult responsibilities caught up with him. By late 1996, he collapsed from exhaustion. At 8 years old, he had already shown clear signs of burnout. Jake missed birthdays, school friends, and the simple joys of childhood. The loneliness carved itself deep, and Lisa remembered those moments as warnings. Hollywood was taking more from him than it was giving back. Jingle All the Way and rising fame. Everything changed again in 1996 when Jake landed the role of Jaime Langston in Jingle All the Way, starring alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger. The movie grossed $129 million worldwide. Jamie wanted a Turbo Man toy more than anything, and Jake brought that energy to life. On set, he was electric, ad-libbing lines that made Schwarzenegger laugh and running through aisles, shouting, "Where is it?" But chaos came at a cost. During a store scene, he knocked down a huge toy display, halting production for hours. Yet those moments showed something raw. His acting felt authentic because it was fueled by real childhood emotions. A tantrum scene required 15 takes, but Jake tapped into genuine frustration and tears, even borrowing arguments he'd had with his sister, Madison. The crew knew they were witnessing something rare. After Jingle All the Way, fame arrived fast. Fan mail poured in, but the attention was not always kind. A stalker sent unsettling gifts to his home, prompting Lisa to tighten security. Jake's love for simple, real toys over Hollywood props and his candid remarks about fame revealed his honest, childlike perspective. Acting felt like work, not fun, and he longed for a normal childhood. Apollo 11 and early maturity. At 7, Jake tackled the Apollo 11 TV movie, playing Neil Armstrong's son, Mark. The sets were realistic and intimidating. Replica spacecraft, zero-gravity rigs, and technical dialogue drawn from actual NASA transcripts. Hours in the mock command module left him sweaty, dizzy, and exhausted. During filming, Jake improvised a line admitting fear of space, a reflection of his own nervousness on small planes in Florida. Director Stephen Rodman and veteran actors were stunned by his emotional honesty. Jeffrey Donovan, who played Buzz Aldrin, mentored him, teaching him focus and calm on set. Despite strict guidance, Jake's natural energy sometimes disrupted scenes. He laughed during tense rehearsals and cracked jokes. Yet even with these challenges, his commitment impressed the crew. His performance earned a Young Artist Award nomination and helped him cultivate a growing interest in science and space. The role taught him how to merge imagination with historical reality, a skill he would need in his most famous role. H2. The Star Wars Journey Begins. In 1997, Jake's life took a sharp, life-changing turn. He entered the worldwide audition process for young Anakin Skywalker. Over 3,000 children from the US and Europe tried out. They all wanted the same role, but Jake had neither experience in sci-fi nor a full understanding of what Star Wars meant to the world. He simply read his lines with honest emotion and natural curiosity. The scene he performed, the pod racing sequence, was simple, yet something in the way he delivered it struck George Lucas. Unlike trained children who sounded like miniature adults, Jake's reading felt genuine, unpolished, and alive. Lucas wanted authenticity, not rehearsed perfection. That raw energy pushed Jake ahead of the thousands of other kids, no matter their experience. Callbacks became even more intense. Experienced young actors who looked the part were rejected. Their performances felt too mechanical. Lucas needed a child who could convey excitement, fear, and wonder as a real kid, not an actor following instructions. Jake's natural Midwestern tone and fearless presence fit perfectly. The final test was with Liam Neeson, who played Qui-Gon Jinn. Neeson interacted with Jake during a critical scene. Liam later said he was surprised by how easily Jake connected emotionally. He had a rare spark, a natural ability to inhabit a character. With this, Jake won one of the biggest roles of the decade, and suddenly, a small-town boy was about to become the face of one of the most anticipated films in cinematic history. Filming The Phantom Menace. Before filming began, Lucas worked closely with Jake, explaining the emotional power of the Force. Jake had to understand what made Anakin tick, what motivated him, and how to convey complex feelings despite his age. One day, during a practice duel with a prop lightsaber, Lucas accidentally swung too fast. The blade hit Jake's hand, leaving a small burn. Jake winced, but kept going. Adults on set were stunned. They saw a child carrying immense pressure, yet refusing to give in. Filming officially began in Tunisia in June 1997. Temperatures soared past 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and Jake wore thick, restrictive costumes that trapped heat and sand. On one day, he collapsed from dehydration during a pod racing scene. The crew rushed him to a shaded tent, gave him water, and asked if he wanted to stop. He shook his head and went back to work. Filming was grueling. He endured long takes, repeated dialogue, and endless retakes. The sand, sun require more, and physical strain pushed him to his limits. During quieter moments, Jake's childlike humor occasionally broke through. On a long Jedi Council scene, he let out a perfect Wookiee roar. Natalie Portman jumped, the crew froze, and then everyone burst out laughing. Even Ewan McGregor grinned, giving a playful Obi-Wan warning. These brief moments of levity helped him stay sane during the long, punishing hours. Jake's voice work alone took more than 50 hours in the sound booth. Once, he slipped in a tiny ad-lib, adding a quick yap after saying yay. Editors argued it was too childish, but George Lucas refused to cut it. That single, spontaneous moment stayed in the final film and became one of the most famous and quoted lines. California child labor laws limited his hours on set to 4 hours per day, which often forced the production to stretch scenes across multiple days. Despite precautions, Jake still broke down crying off-camera, overwhelmed by the role's demands. The crew realized that this little boy was carrying far more than most children ever could. When filming wrapped in 1998, Jake kept a small pod racer model from the set. To adults, it seemed like a toy, but for him, it represented everything he had endured. 6 months away from friends, away from normal life, and immersed in an adult world. He had longed for ordinary childhood experiences, but instead had lived in a bubble of lights, cameras, and adult expectations. The premiere and overnight fame. May 19, 1999. Jake walked the red carpet at Grauman's Chinese Theater. At 10 years old, flashes hit his eyes, fans cheered, and everyone pressed for photos. The film opened with $64 million in its first weekend, and eventually surpassed $1 billion worldwide. Jake Lloyd had become famous overnight, but fame brought its own storm. Critics pounced on the young actor, labeling him wooden, awkward, and unconvincing. Early internet forums mocked him mercilessly, often calling him cruel nicknames. Jake didn't understand the vitriol. He was just a kid, doing what he loved. His mother, Lisa, recognized the danger and tried to shield him from the growing hostility. Even at school, he was relentlessly bullied. Children repeated his lines, mocked his voice, and made the hallways echo with ridicule. Anxiety and withdrawal set in quickly. Jake skipped school. He became afraid to trust people. The joy of acting, the thing that once lit him up, now felt heavy, dangerous, and isolating. Industry veterans tried to intervene. Ron Howard wrote a public letter defending Jake, calling the attacks unfair and irresponsible. But even with adults' support, the pressure never fully lifted. By 2002, he needed 8 bodyguards at a fan convention because of threats. The fear, the bullying, and the relentless attention made him retreat from acting completely. H2, The Fallout and Vanishing. Set purpose. After the premiere of The Phantom Menace, Jake Lloyd's life changed in ways no child could have anticipated. Overnight, he became one of the most recognizable faces in the world. But that recognition came with a strong, dark shadow. Criticism wasn't limited to professional reviews. It was personal. Adults online mocked him mercilessly, even going so far as to send threatening letters to his home. Part P. More than 1,000 letters arrived filled with anger, sarcasm, and outright hatred. These weren't just words on a screen. They were attacks on a child who had worked tirelessly to bring a character to life. Lisa, his mother, shielded him as best she could, intercepting packages and limiting contact with strangers. But no matter how much protection she offered, the public's judgment seeped into every corner of Jake's life. Even at school, things weren't safe. Children who had once ignored him suddenly treated him like a spectacle. They repeated his lines, mocked his voice, and turned the hallways into a chorus of ridicule. The small victories of childhood, birthday parties, recess, simple friendships, vanished. Anxiety took hold. Jake began skipping school, retreating into himself, and avoiding the world that had once celebrated him. Fan conventions, which should have been fun and celebratory, became a strange mix of admiration and fear. Some fans treated him like royalty, begging for photos and autographs. Others heckled him openly, shouting lines from the movie and laughing at his reactions. By 2002, the threats had escalated to the point that he required 8 bodyguards just to attend a single event. For a child, this was overwhelming. The world had become unsafe, and trust in people was eroding fast. The price of fame. Jake's retreat from acting was inevitable. The cost of early stardom was simply too high. He had lived under intense scrutiny, balancing grueling work schedules, emotional performances, and the relentless judgment of millions. His childhood had been stripped away, leaving him with memories of stress, fear, and exhaustion rather than play and fun. In 2000, Jake did receive recognition. He won the Young Artist Award, standing on stage as one of the youngest recipients. But even that small victory could not repair the damage. Hollywood had demanded more than any child should bear, and the public had been quick to criticize, mocking the boy who had only tried to do his best. Despite the accolades, Jake quietly stepped away from the industry. He retreated from cameras, scripts, and lights. The world of celebrity that once seemed magical had become a cage. The little boy who had once brought Anakin Skywalker to life was no longer the same. The pressures of fame, the cruelty of strangers, and the isolation of being recognized everywhere he went had taken a toll on his spirit. End hooray of H3. The following years were marked by a desire for normalcy and peace. Jake lived largely out of the public eye, trying to reclaim the childhood he had missed. He focused on ordinary activities, seeking quiet, private spaces where he could simply be himself. But life had more challenges waiting. In 2018, tragedy struck his family in a way that shook him profoundly. Details were sparse, but the event left lasting emotional scars. It reinforced the reality that fame and talent could not shield him from the harshness of life. Jake's disappearance from public life wasn't just a retreat. It was a necessary step to protect his mental health and cope with the weight of personal loss. During these years, he battled struggles that no one outside his immediate family could see. Anxiety, depression, and the lingering effects of early childhood trauma shaped his world. The public never knew, and the headlines never reflected the quiet, intense fight happening behind closed doors. Reemergence in 2023. When Jake resurfaced in 2023, the world barely recognized him. Years away from Hollywood, away from fanfare, and away from the pressures of celebrity, had changed him profoundly. He had lost much of the innocence and naivety of his childhood, but he also emerged with new perspective and resilience. The story of Jake Lloyd is not just about the bright lights of Hollywood or the harsh glare of public scrutiny. It's about a child thrust into an adult world, a world filled with expectations he could not possibly meet, and the personal battles he faced in the aftermath. The boy who once ran through toy aisles shouting for a Turbo Man toy had been fighting battles unseen, and for a long time he had been losing. Yet, his return is a reminder that even after immense struggle, there is hope for healing, reflection, and reclaiming life on one's own terms. The little boy who once lit up the screen with his fearless energy had survived more than most could imagine, and his story is a testament to resilience in the face of impossible pressure. Ahead, strung, reflection, and legacy. As you look back, Jake Lloyd's story is a portrait of childhood stolen by fame. From the quiet mountains of Fort Collins, Colorado, to the harsh lights of Hollywood. His journey was extraordinary, but it came at a cost few could understand: divorce, financial struggles, and the constant push for auditions left Jake navigating a world that demanded emotional maturity far beyond his years. The experiences that shaped him as a performer, ER, Unhook the Stars, The Pretender, Jingle All the Way, Apollo 11, also shaped his understanding of life's unfairness. Every set, every line, every long day of filming was a lesson in resilience, endurance, and courage. Despite the joy that acting sometimes brought, Jake often felt trapped by adult expectations. He learned to perform on cue, to cry on demand, to carry the emotional weight of scenes involving death, illness, and loss. Yet at the same time, he craved the freedom of play and friendship. The dichotomy of being a child and a professional actor created tension he could not easily reconcile. The backlash after the Phantom Menace was intense and unrelenting. Criticism from strangers, adults mocking his performance, and the pressure of being one of the most recognizable faces in cinema left lasting marks on his mental health. Anxiety and social withdrawal became constants in his life. Even in moments of celebration, there was fear. Fan conventions could be dangerous. Public appearances came with security concerns, and the vulnerability of being a child under public scrutiny weighed heavily. The letters, the ridicule, the bullying, all contributed to a sense of isolation that followed him into adolescence and adulthood. It is easy to dismiss these pressures as the cost of fame, but for Jake, they were far more than inconvenience. They were life-altering experiences. Each rejection, each mocking comment, each stifled birthday or missed moment with friends compounded the burden he carried. The vanishing years. From the early 2000s onward, Jake disappeared from the spotlight. He retreated into ordinary life, seeking the normalcy he had been denied. These years, largely invisible to the public, were ones of reflection, struggle, and gradual healing. In 2018, tragedy struck his family, reinforcing the fragility of life and the limits of fame as a protective shield. The world didn't know what he was facing behind closed doors. The private battles with grief, mental health, and the residual weight of childhood trauma. These challenges explain why Jake remained absent for so long, away from cameras, interviews, and public expectation. Return and reflection. When Jake reappeared in 2023, he was almost unrecognizable, not just in appearance, but in the wisdom and perspective that life had forced him to gain. The boy who once ran through toy aisles with wild energy had grown into someone shaped by the extremes of early fame and personal hardship. His story is not just one of fame, criticism, and isolation. It is a story of survival, resilience, and reflection. He faced pressures no child should ever face and endured them with determination. He lost parts of his childhood, yet he survived and eventually found a way back to the world on his own terms. Lessons from Jake Lloyd's journey. Jake Lloyd's life is a powerful reminder of the costs of early fame. It is a cautionary tale for parents, producers, and audiences about the responsibilities adults hold when putting children in the public eye. It highlights the fragile line between opportunity and exploitation, creativity and pressure, childhood and forced maturity. Yet it is also a story of hope. Even after immense struggles, personal loss, and the crushing weight of public judgment, Jake emerged. He found resilience, strength, and the ability to reflect on his journey. His experiences teach us that while fame can give extraordinary opportunities, it is never worth the loss of a child's innocence or peace of mind. Jake Lloyd's legacy is more than Anakin Skywalker. It is a story of a brave child who faced the adult world, survived it, and emerged with insight few adults ever achieve. The triumphs, the failures, the heartbreak, and the quiet victories all form a narrative that resonates far beyond the silver screen. Closing, from the small mountains of Fort Collins to the red carpets of Hollywood, Jake's story is one of extraordinary talent, overwhelming pressure, and quiet courage. He brought Anakin Skywalker to life, and in doing so, carried the weight of the world on his young shoulders. Though his journey was painful, it is also a testament to human resilience. Jake Lloyd reminds us that even in the face of criticism, isolation, and unimaginable challenges, it is possible to survive and eventually to reclaim a sense of self. The boy who once chased a Turbo Man toy through a store is more than a movie star. He is a survivor, a fighter, and a symbol of the complexities hidden behind the bright lights of fame. And while Hollywood may have taken much from him, it never took his spirit, his talent, or his courage.